one of which is our presidents and chancellors. Let me write to NCAA President Mark Emmer and share our desire for them to continue pursuing some federal legislation around uniformity in national sports gambling standards. I also think we need to be careful about mental health issues for our student athletes. These are real issues that our student athletes are talking about with us regularly. Our campuses do well in supporting and meeting their needs, but we can add to those. We can add to those by doing certain things. I think gambling and the pressure there could be a part of that. I talked a lot about officiating and external review and some of the changes that have taken place, some around how we communicate about officiating. I'm happy to talk about any of those issues or whatever else may be on your mind. So rather than talk for 20 minutes like I did in the big room, let's see what you want to discuss.
Hey, it's Andy Coffin here from KMIZ in Columbia, Missouri. I'm curious, if the Mizzou sanctions do not get overturned, what kind of message do you think the NCAA is sending?
I don't want to speculate, so there's a hypothetical there. I think all of these issues are reminders of the need to be overly attentive from a compliance standpoint. I am concerned about what I perceive as a rigid application of a penalty matrix, but the NCAA Board of Directors said, here's the prescribed penalties for activities. It suggests that we may not be in the right place with that penalty structure. Yet the message has been to avoid these problems, and we're going to work to continue to avoid these types of problems. Second move to your right.
Tina Maverick Fox out of Nashville. You mentioned healthy options for media days, moving it to places. What made Nashville that destination after you have been here and in Atlanta?
I'll talk about Atlanta, and then if I can, the College Football Hall of Fame was a natural for us, and so if we were going to move after 30 plus years here in the Birmingham and Hoover area, we wanted to go to places where we thought we had a successful base. In Nashville, given what we do there in basketball, Vanderbilt's presence, the passion for the University of Tennessee locally, but also the accessibility of the city for any other fans or media who want to be a part of the event in Nashville, we can make that happen. You have a brand new hotel that has been very interested in being a part of this experience, so we look forward to that venue.
Hey, Commissioner, how you doing?
I'm well.
A couple of questions for you. One, you talked about the attendance within the SEC, how healthy it is, but with the changing landscape of football as it stands, how do you long-term keep butts in the seats in stadiums?
We talk about it every day in some ways, and we're seeing, I don't know if it's a demographic change, if it's an expectation change and ripple effects from the college football playoff. If it's a need to adjust stadiums that may have worked in another setting, and we made a change to our alcohol policy that is one of those things that we heard constantly. So from a conference office, we have almost for a decade now been in the activity of fan surveys.
Okay.
As I think about analytics and researching information, we may be even more active in learning. Our campuses are all active in learning and adjusting, and these attendance issues affect them most directly, and then how do we bring together our directors of marketing to collaborate? It's not about television. We've had every game on TV for decades.
Okay.
The kickoff times have been varied between early, midday, and late for decades. And so how do we learn and adapt to figure out what's important and where do we need to adjust, and then what can we do to adjust to meet our fans' interests and needs? Those are the types of questions we'll ask continually.
The other thing that I was really encouraged that you talked about in your opening statements in here was mental health. And obviously with the work that I do, my other half of changing the narrative, I just know how paramount that is. And to have a commissioner speak about it in their opening statements in the media, I just want to applaud you, because what I have learned is if you start talking about it and take the mask off, then these young people are more and more prone, and they feel okay sharing their struggles. I'm curious as a commissioner, because nobody wants to lose a player. Nobody wants to have a player that's struggling inside. As a commissioner, what is your edict to your schools to have increased awareness around mental health?
Thank you for your comments first. And those comments are driven by listening to our student athletes in very sincere and specific ways. And your question really is their question, is what can you do as commissioner to help better support the mental health of our student athletes. And that's where we've had really candid conversations about a lot of this need is individualized. So I'm not able to sit in an office in downtown Birmingham and meet the needs of 5,400 student athletes, but we can raise the level of attention. We've also spent time learning about what happens on our campuses, and as I shared, the good news really removes the need for an edict, because our universities, first of all, for their student bodies, because that's a reality as well for young people, be they students or student athletes. Our universities provide mental health counseling, but our athletics departments have done that. We have athletics departments who have added 4, 5, and 6 counselors just to meet those needs. The pressures are different. One moves from a high school setting where they may have been a big deal in a town, and all of a sudden their name's all over the media or social media, hopefully for good things. But at 18, not everyone's prepared for that. And the reality is our universities and their athletics programs are continuing to evolve and helping people meet those challenges. That's the challenge.
Patrick Rickman, WBMA here in Birmingham. It's certainly exciting to have media days moving around to other cities, but where does Hoover stand when it comes to future sites?
We didn't announce past 21, and we'll go through a process at some point. We don't have a timeline to consider opportunities. We play our baseball tournament here, and we've had this incredibly successful baseball tournament, part of which is driven by the commitment that the city of Hoover made to the campus around the Met. We had our largest attended baseball tournament. So understand there are a lot of things, a lot of people have interest in the conference, which is great if you're me. And we'll walk through a decision-making process for 22 and beyond. And I would expect Hoover and the Birmingham area would be part of that conversation, along with other metropolitan areas.
To the right,
Hi, I'm Melanie Posey. I'm actually with the city of Hoover. So based upon that similar question, let me ask this. Can you say what Hoover has done right in the past few years, first of all? And then second of all, what can we as a city continue to do to make ourselves attractive to this process?
Well, you know, baseball is a great example of a city that's done something right. We had a baseball stadium, we had the end of an agreement, and we had the need, and really my first year, the responsibility to look beyond to see are there better situations, because my responsibility is to find the best opportunities for the Southeastern Conference. We now have an indoor facility that I think the city benefits from year-round. There was just a basketball tournament there last week that drew our coaches in. You see this playground and recreation area, practice fields. And so they've built this synergy around baseball that I think is a really great answer for baseball. Now, what's the right answer for football media days? Our event has changed. We have more people. We have more needs, more media. And the facility works now, but as we continue to create opportunities, I was on the Marty and McGee show, which takes up a room. So that's another space. We didn't think I was going to talk about Marty and McGee here. We'll continue to look, and we'll have proposal specifications. We also want to be attentive from the conference perspective. If we're going to be creative about how might we engage fans, really to Rachel's question about building our fan base, moving it around is a natural outcome of that thought process. And then whether it's Hoover or Atlanta or Nashville, how do we creatively work to make sure the media gets their jobs done, but maybe make it a celebratory event as well. I think that's what I put on people's plates, be it Hoover or other cities that may have an interest in the future.
we have one in the front row right here. Excuse me. You have one?
Yeah.
Just go ahead.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Sure. To go back to the main room comments with the new officiating website and the Twitter account, what do you hope to accomplish with that? And is it possible that that kind of information being disseminated creates a less toxic environment for officials when they do things that fan bases don't agree with?
I don't know if it creates less blowback on officiating calls. I don't think I can win everyone on the officiating issue, and I accept that. But I also don't accept that the bucket of goodwill and credibility has to just stand empty. And rather than use the word transparency, how can we educate people about all that goes into our officiating? As I said, we have highly committed people of integrity officiating games, and they want to officiate games correctly. The game doesn't lend itself to being perfect, whether you're a player, coach calling plays or an official. And people have to realize that. It's not just a Saturday event in football. It's not just a Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday event in basketball. We want people to see all the work that goes in, whether it's through the week or through the year. And one of the questions was, well, what does Steve Shaw do? You know, Steve Shaw has a full-time job dedicated to supporting officiating, to guiding our program. And that's a level of commitment that's important to us and one that we'll continue to support and probably expand upon how we support officiating.
Clint Schweitzer, Great American Sports Network in Kansas City. Commissioner, you spoke about the sanctions levied to the University of Missouri. How important is it for you to kind of have the backs of institutions like Missouri and other schools in the SEC that may face these kind of adverse situations?
The goal for us is very clearly stated to our institutions. It's never to pull down a championship banner, never give back a championship trophy, and never have a team banned from postseason because we can't follow the NCAA's rules or meet their academic standards. That's uniform for everyone. And we have a responsibility in advising and supporting our institutions as they work through an infractions process. And we do that with Missouri. We do that with every institution that walks through that process. And that's a responsibility that we take very seriously for everyone.
On the riser in the group.
Rashad Snell, Alabama News Network in Montgomery. This year, the SEC will have alcohol sales in the stadiums. Just talk about that being mixed with rowdy fans and 21-year-old college kids already.
We changed our prohibitive policy on alcohol in the general seating area this year, and we did so after a year-long discussion with the working group, and actually after years of conversation about whether the SEC should continue to be the only conference with this absolute prohibition. The change allows institutions autonomy to make decisions about selling alcohol, but does so within, again, the only conference circumstance where we have management expectations for the sale and availability of alcohol. There's no sales within the stands. There's no hawking within the stands. The sales have to be from fixed concession areas. There are specific cutoff times. There are specific management expectations and oversight expectations, and we'll go through the year. We'll learn as we go through the year how many of our institutions sell alcohol. We'll pay attention to public safety issues and determine what adjustments, if any, need to be made in the future. But we expect our institutions to exercise care as they also exercise this opportunity to make alcohol more widely available around athletic events.
Greg, I wanted to ask about the network contract and I guess the Tier 1 contract that's coming up. Would y'all prefer to stay with the broadcast network? Has membership said anything about preferences or anything like that? And when do you think it will be wrapped up, generally speaking?
You're asking me about our agreement with CBS?
We currently have it with CBS.
Well, there are elements of that question that aren't appropriate for me to comment publicly. We've had a great relationship spanning decades with CBS. As I said, we had 10 of the most 20 viewed football games on television last season at the college level. We had the highest viewed college football championship game, and I think we have 5 more seasons with CBS. So we'll work to see what the future may hold.
Scott Gardner, WLTZ out of Columbus, Georgia. We've seen the transfer portal really impact the sport recently, and then we've seen it kind of come under fire recently. Where does the SEC and yourself stand on the rule now as opposed to where it was and where it might be?
Here's where I stand. I think it was appropriate that our athletics programs not control communication, destination, or financial aid should someone transfer. Those are realities that 3 or 4 years ago an institution could block. That's the phrase you saw, or determine whether somebody else received aid if they chose to transfer. I think moving away from that's healthy, point one. Point two, I've said repeatedly that if we had a year of residence as a standard somehow, that causes people to slow down and supports the proper educational outcome, but that's not reality. That's not where we are. And so I've heard the concerns. The conference has not done anything to restrict transfers beyond our current policy of interconference transfer of all serve a year of residence. In fact, we've created freedom for graduate transfers, which is an indication of relieving a little bit of the transfer pressure. And so far, that's been managed appropriately.
Okay, Commissioner, thank you very much for that.
That's it. Okay.